Dr. Lucas Barnett knew how to play God. He'd sliced open celebrities in his private Atlanta clinic and stitched their insecurities into oblivion. He was the man people trusted with their faces, their bodies, their vulnerabilities. But for all his precision in the operating room, Lucas had one weakness, the illusion of control. And Zariah Mills knew exactly how to shatter it. She walked in one afternoon without an appointment. No call. No paperwork. Just a bruised lip, a swollen cheek, and a question in her eyes that made his spine tighten. "Can you fix me?" She didn't cry. Didn't flinch. Just stood there with this calm, unreadable face, the kind Lucas had seen on patients who'd learned to wear silence like armor. She was tall, maybe late 20s, skin like honey under his office lights, her eyes unreadable. There was something magnetic about her, but not the usual kind of beauty. It was darker. She looked like someone who'd lost everything and found peace in it. His nurse tried to intervene. "Sir, we can schedule her for next week." Lucas waved her off. He took her into his private exam room. Her chart, when he finally glanced at it, was empty. No ID, no insurance, just the name, Zariah Mills. He should have stopped there. Should have asked questions. But he was already hooked. When he asked what happened, she said, "I fell." He looked at her again. "No, really," she whispered, then smiled. "I fell for the wrong man." That smile. It wasn't flirtatious. It was knowing. Like she already understood the effect she had on him, and more dangerously, that he didn't. He touched her cheek gently, professional. Her breath hitched, just slightly. Lucas told himself it was empathy. That she needed help. But what he felt wasn't empathy. It was hunger. And it wasn't new. Lucas had built his life on control, surgical, emotional, marital. But with Zariah in that room, bleeding but dignified, he saw something else, a mirror. She was broken too. But she wasn't hiding it. He gave her a referral for a CT scan. Wrote it down on a sticky note and held it out. She didn't take it. Instead, she reached out slowly and placed her fingers over his. "You help people, right?" she asked. He nodded. "Even when they don't deserve it?" Lucas didn't answer. He stared at her hand on his wedding ring glinting like a mockery between their skin. She stood, and that was the end of their first meeting. No surgery scheduled. No medical advice followed. Just a bruise, a glance, and a silent agreement neither of them said aloud. That night, Lucas didn't sleep. Zariah's file was fake. He had his staff check. There was no insurance trail, no birth certificate, no digital footprint. She didn't exist. But she haunted his thoughts anyway. 3 nights later, she came back. No bruises this time. Just that same impossible calm. This time, she asked to see him alone. "I need something more intimate." Lucas hesitated. But only for a second. He locked the door. His marriage had been dying for years, smothered under Botox dinners and charity galas. His wife, Fiona, was beautiful in a cruel, porcelain way. She didn't ask about his late nights. He didn't ask about her private trainer. So when Zariah placed her hand on his chest and whispered, "You don't have to pretend with me," he let go. Of caution. Of morality. Of everything. What happened in that office should have been a single lapse in judgment. A moment he'd bury like the others. But it wasn't. Because 3 weeks later, Lucas was in the ER. Fever. Fatigue. Lesions. His colleagues thought it was some strange viral infection. Maybe a staph issue from surgery. But deep down, Lucas knew. He just didn't want to say it aloud. His weight dropped. His skin broke out. His organs began turning against themselves. His body, a temple he once controlled with scalpel precision, was rotting from the inside. And Zariah stopped returning his calls. He drove to the address she'd once scribbled on a napkin. An old duplex in the west side, near the tracks. The mailbox had no name. The neighbor, an old woman in a shawl, looked at him with pity. "Zariah," she repeated. "She lived here years ago. Real quiet. But the men who left that house? Not so quiet. What happened to her?" The woman looked down. "I think she's gone. But not buried." Lucas left in a panic. He didn't know what terrified him more, that Zariah was a ghost, or that she wasn't. At home, his wife started asking questions. "Why are you sweating like that? Why are you sleeping on the couch? What did you do, Lucas?" And Lucas didn't have the words. Because the symptoms weren't just physical anymore. He started hearing things. Doors opening. Whispers. That soft voice, even when they don't deserve it. He checked himself into a private hospital under a fake name. Ran every test he could. The final one broke him. HIV positive. Advanced. And not just any strain. An aggressive variant known to accelerate immune collapse within months. Someone had infected him intentionally. The only question was, why? He remembered every touch. Every second. That single encounter. One night. One time. It didn't make sense. Unless, it was never about sex. Unless, the sex was the weapon. At her last recorded clinic visit, Zariah listed her occupation as former med student. That's when everything clicked. She knew what she was doing. She knew exactly what she was doing. Lucas stared into the bathroom mirror, the skin around his eyes already sunken, a pale shadow of the man he once was. He whispered her name like a confession. Like a curse. Zariah. The woman he thought he saved. The woman who came to his office bleeding. Not because she needed help, but because she wanted revenge. And now, Lucas was dying. Slowly. Intimately. Just like she wanted. Lucas Barnett had been unraveling for weeks, but the scary part was, it didn't look like stress. It didn't look like overwork or guilt. It looked medical. And for a man who spent his life saving others, that kind of irony tasted bitter. Zariah Mills didn't just walk into his life. She took a seat, crossed her legs, and refused to leave. She started appearing without appointments, lingering in the hallway of his private practice, brushing past reception with a sly, almost innocent smile. His receptionist, Dana, once whispered, "She gives me chills, Dr. B." He laughed it off. But he didn't stop her. How could he? Lucas had tasted something he didn't even know he craved. Powerlessness, maybe. A woman who didn't beg, didn't chase, didn't even need him, but still made him abandon everything for a moment in her presence. He had cancelled a gallbladder surgery just to meet her at a motel outside of Macon. And when his patient died 2 days later from a complication another surgeon missed, Lucas wept alone in the hotel bathroom while Zariah lit a cigarette by the window. She never offered comfort. She just turned and said, "You feelin' okay today, Doc?" That became her thing. Her way of checking in. Like some part of her already knew. Like she wasn't asking, she was confirming. He'd noticed it first in the mirror. His skin had gone waxy, like an undertone of yellow was leaking beneath the surface. The whites of his eyes looked slightly off, like someone had brushed tea across them. At first, he blamed it on the bourbon. Then stress. Then allergies. But no matter what vitamins or hydration protocols he tried, it didn't fade. His hands trembled during surgery. Dana noticed. "You sure you're all right?" she asked one afternoon. "You didn't eat at all today." Lucas muttered something about intermittent fasting. But the truth? Food made him nauseous now. Even coffee. Especially coffee. He used to live on black roast, now even the smell curdled his stomach. And yet, through it all, he kept calling Zariah. She'd arrive like she wasn't summoned, always already in the room when he entered. Perfume like vanilla and smoke. Her hair twisted in a bun, or loose curls falling over her shoulder. She always looked perfect. Too perfect. He stopped wearing his wedding ring. He stopped attending his daughter's ballet recitals. Once, during dinner, his 9-year-old son spilled ketchup on the floor and Lucas screamed so loud the kid burst into tears. He left the house that night and didn't return for 2 days. Where was he? With Zariah. But every time they were together, a piece of him disappeared. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust anymore. It was compulsion, like scratching an itch that only gets deeper and bloodier. "I had a dream last night," Zariah said once, her voice so low he could barely hear it over the hum of the motel air conditioning. "You were in a bathtub. Bleeding from the mouth. Like, a lot." He tried to laugh it off, but her face didn't change. "I've been having it for weeks now," she added. "Always the same. Red water. Dead eyes." Lucas couldn't stop shivering that night. He blamed the thermostat. But inside, deep down, he knew something wasn't right. And it wasn't just nightmares. His hair was falling out in the shower. Clumps. His skin started peeling on his palms. When he finally checked his lab results, blood panels he'd secretly run under another name, his liver enzymes were spiked off the charts. Like someone had poisoned him. Slowly. Carefully. And yet, he didn't stop seeing her. He'd wake up with rashes on his chest. Boils forming under his armpits. A strange taste in his mouth, metallic, almost bloody. His wife started sleeping in the guest room, calling his behavior erratic. But Lucas didn't care. He only cared about that next question. "You feelin' okay today, Doc?" It was like she was feeding on the answer. One night, after he passed out in the parking lot outside the hospital, he was admitted under a fake name to avoid press. Dr. Hargrove, his old mentor, stood at the foot of his bed looking like he'd seen a ghost. "Lucas," he said, "your immune system is tanking. Your kidneys are barely functioning. What the hell are you doing to yourself?" Lucas didn't answer. He couldn't. Because that night, when he woke up from sedation, Zariah was sitting beside him. She wasn't supposed to be allowed in. But there she was. Legs crossed. Fingernails painted deep burgundy. "You feelin' okay today, Doc?" And this time, she smiled wide enough to show her teeth. "You did this to me," Lucas whispered. Zariah tilted her head. "You did this to you. I just gave you what you asked for." "What did you give me?" he demanded. She leaned in so close he could smell the vanilla again. "A piece of me," she whispered. "And baby, you weren't strong enough to carry it." She kissed his forehead and walked out. When he called after her, the nurses said no one had visited. That night, Lucas wrote a letter to his wife, confessing everything. The affair. The addiction. The woman. But even as he wrote it, his fingers cramped. His vision blurred. His body was giving up. Zariah kept coming back in dreams now. Sitting at the foot of his bed. Smiling. Always asking. "You feelin' okay today, Doc?" The infection wasn't just physical. It had become spiritual. His soul was rotting. Still, he couldn't stop thinking of her. What was she? A patient? A punishment? A prophecy? And why did it feel like she was waiting for something worse to happen? Lucas collapsed on a Tuesday. It wasn't a graceful fall, there was no clutching of the chest, no warning. Just the sound of keys hitting the pavement as his body crumpled on the marble driveway, face first. His driver screamed. His neighbors gawked. His wife didn't even know, she was upstairs folding monogram towels. The ER was cold. Lucas hated hospitals when he wasn't in control. He didn't like the way nurses barked orders, how IVs punctured veins without permission. He was used to being the god in the room, not the one hooked to monitors, covered in his own sweat. A young doctor with nervous eyes hovered over him. "We found something in your blood," she said softly, like it would cushion the blow. Lucas blinked. "What do you mean something?" She glanced at the chart. Elevated liver enzymes, extreme immunosuppression. "We ran an HIV panel, it came back reactive." He laughed. Actually laughed. The kind of disbelief that bounces off sterile walls. "That's impossible," he spat. "Run it again." They did. Twice. Each one came back with the same cruel, clinical truth. HIV positive. It wasn't a medical opinion, it was a death sentence. One that bled into the corners of his mind and refused to leave. By the time his wife got to the hospital, he was already throwing things at the wall. The lamp. His phone. A vase full of fake orchids. "You think I'm cheating on you?" she asked, too calm. He didn't answer. "Because how do you explain Zariah Mills?" He remembered their last session. Her perfume was soft, something expensive masked as innocent. She hadn't even asked for pills that time. Just sat on the exam table, swinging her legs like a schoolgirl, tilting her head. "You feeling okay today, Doc?" she'd asked, smiling too wide. He'd chalked it up to charm. But now, the edges of that smile cut deeper. Every laugh, every moan, every breath they'd shared felt tainted, radioactive. Lucas didn't sleep that night. He lay on the couch, sweat-soaked and terrified, scrolling through medical journals he once authored. Looking for anything that said maybe the tests were wrong. That maybe it was a lab error. A mistake. But science didn't care about his title. It cared about the truth. And the truth was eating him alive. By Friday, he made a decision. He told his staff he was taking a sabbatical. He told his wife he needed space. He told himself he wasn't going to see Zariah again. But by midnight, he was parked outside her apartment. The building was quiet, brick walls with peeling paint and flickering hallway lights. This wasn't her side of town, he realized. This wasn't someone passing through pain. This was someone who lived in it. He knocked. Waited. Knocked again. No answer. The door was unlocked. And Lucas walked in. Zariah's apartment was strange. Clean. Too clean. Like a hotel room that no one lived in but someone wanted to look lived in. No dishes. No family photos. Just a single framed quote on the wall. Love is just another way to say, I own you. His stomach twisted. He moved through the living room quietly, like someone tiptoeing through a dream he couldn't wake up from. That's when he saw the box, wedged between the dresser and the wall. He pulled it out. Inside were pill bottles. Antiretrovirals. Prescription labels scraped off. Dates written in permanent marker. A map of medication regimens too organized to be accidental. Lucas stared, numb, as the truth began to click like a lock sliding into place. Zariah hadn't gotten sick. Because Zariah already knew. He stood, shaking, and moved to the fridge. Maybe he was looking for a drink. Maybe just an escape. But what he found instead was a yellow sticky note stuck to a Chinese takeout menu. 4 words. It only takes once. His knees buckled. He sank to the floor, holding the note like it was a confession, a weapon, a eulogy. The room felt like it was closing in. Had she targeted him? Was it revenge? Or was he just one of many? He crawled to her bedroom. It was colder there. The window cracked just slightly. On her nightstand was a single photo. Not of family. Not of friends. Just her. Young, thinner, standing in front of what looked like a courthouse. Behind her, a man in handcuffs. Lucas leaned closer. It was blurry, but unmistakable. He'd seen that man before, on a case years ago. A malpractice lawsuit. A pediatrician accused of abuse. Zariah had been the witness. The girl with the trembling voice who told the court he touched her during exams. And no one believed her. The doctor walked free. And Zariah disappeared. Until now. Lucas sat on the edge of her bed, breathing through his rage. Through his horror. Through the terrifying possibility that he wasn't the first, and wouldn't be the last. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Did you find it? His blood turned to ice. He didn't respond. Just shoved the phone in his pocket and ran out the door. The hallway felt longer than before. Like a tunnel. He didn't sleep that night either. But this time, it wasn't denial keeping him awake. It was fear. Because Lucas Barnett, for the first time in his life, had no cure for what he'd become. Lucas hadn't been to church in 15 years. But in those final weeks, when the pain curled through his body like fire-licking bone, he begged for mercy like a man gripping rosary beads with bloody fingers. He prayed to a God he'd mocked in lectures. A God he'd outgrown in med school. A God who, it seemed, wasn't answering anymore. The decline was fast. Violent. Unforgiving. It started with fevers that boiled him from the inside out. Then came the rashes. His skin blistered under the weight of bed sheets. His gums bled when he spoke. And when he stood, if he could stand, his eyes yellowed, the white stained like old paper. The liver was the first organ to fall. Then the rest followed, like dominoes crashing in slow motion. Sepsis set in like a thief in the night. The nurses at Mercy General whispered when they passed his room. "Is that Dr. Barnett?" one asked. Wasn't he the chief? Now he was just another body in room 217. Another patient with purple fingertips and a feeding tube taped to his cheek. Another statistic. His wife, Candace, sat beside him every day. But her love had changed. She didn't touch him anymore. Didn't hold his hand. She brought crossword puzzles and read silently, crossing words with quick ink strokes while her husband gasped for air. He had told her everything, well, most of it. That he had cheated. That the girl had lied about her age. That she had infected him with a virus he couldn't out-medical. But he didn't tell her about the note. Or the pills. Or the photo of the man in cuffs. Because what haunted Lucas wasn't just what Zariah had done, it was the sinking suspicion that he'd earned it. "I didn't deserve this," he croaked once. Candace hadn't looked up from her puzzle. Then there was his son, Aaron. 14. Smart. Sweet. Too innocent for the ugliness that had taken root in their home. One night, Aaron came into the room with tearful eyes. "Dad? Mom's crying in the closet," he whispered. "She said you're sick because of something you did." Lucas couldn't answer. His voice was a dry rattle. Aaron leaned in. Did you do something bad? Lucas blinked slowly. Then nodded. It broke the boy's heart in real time. Lucas saw it. A shattering so complete it left Aaron stumbling backward, like he'd just seen his father turn into a stranger. After that, the visits got shorter. Candace came late and left early. Aaron stopped coming altogether. And Zariah? Zariah came exactly when she meant to. One rainy Tuesday, at 6:34 p.m., she walked into his hospital room like she belonged there. No visitor badge. No hesitation. Just calm. Patient. Beautiful. Her hair was pulled into a low bun. Her lips painted the soft red he remembered from the exam room. She stood by the window, watching lightning stretch across the sky like jagged cracks in a mirror. Lucas stirred in his bed. "I thought you were gone," he rasped. She didn't answer at first. Then, without turning, she said, "So did the others." His body convulsed in a tiny shiver. "Zariah, please. You have to help me. There's medication. I read, there's treatment. You've been taking it, haven't you? You knew what this was. You." She turned then. And blinked. That same blank expression. Like a child staring at a bug she just crushed. "Now you know how I felt," she said quietly. He sobbed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was the soft, pathetic kind. The kind that came from the mouth of a man who'd lost everything, his job, his family, his body, his soul, and still couldn't figure out when it all began. Zariah walked to the foot of the bed. "You made me believe I was crazy," she said. Lucas opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. "I was 17. You told the court I was unstable. That I made it all up. That I wanted attention." "I didn't know," he gasped. "Zariah, I swear to God." She smiled then. Not wide. Just enough to cut. "I stopped believing in God the day you unzipped my dress in that examination room." The silence stretched. Thick. Smothering. Then Lucas reached for her wrist. "Please, help me." She let him touch her. Let his fingers, now brittle and bone-thin, tremble against her skin. She tilted her head like she was considering it. "I could," she whispered. Hope bloomed in his throat. Then died. "But I won't." She stepped back and reached into her purse. He thought, for one stupid, desperate second, that she was going to pull out medicine. A vial. Something that could undo the rot consuming him. Instead, she pulled out a journal. His journal. She dropped it on the floor beside the bed. Then walked out. And never looked back. The next morning, Candace found the journal. She flipped through pages of shaky handwriting, frantic scribbles, dates, memories, names, Zariah's name. Over and over again. Circled. Underlined. By the time the nurse came in for the vitals, Candace had stopped crying. She simply placed the journal on the side table, kissed Lucas on the forehead, and whispered, "I hope she haunts you." 3 days later, Lucas coded. The doctors tried to resuscitate him for 12 minutes. 12 long, failed minutes. The official cause was septic shock due to advanced liver failure. The unofficial cause? A woman he underestimated. At the funeral, only a dozen people came. Some colleagues. One cousin. A priest who mispronounced his name. Candace wore black but didn't weep. Aaron stared at the floor. And in the back row, under a wide black hat and veil, Zariah sat with folded hands. She didn't cry either. Didn't smile. Didn't move. But her lips did part, just once, as she whispered the final line from her fridge note. "It only takes once." The courtroom was packed, yet silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, just the clink of her handcuffs when she walked in. Zariah Mills, 29 years old, wore a soft beige blouse and slacks too loose for her frame. No makeup. No jewelry. Her hair slicked back like she didn't care who was watching. But she smiled. Not a wide smile. Not a grin. Just the kind of slight, knowing curl at the corner of her mouth that made people shift in their seats. Lucas Barnett's wife, Madison, sat in the front row. Black suit. Veil. Their son, Evan, barely 14, held her hand with a grip too tight for his age. He hadn't cried at the funeral, but today, he looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. The prosecution laid it out clean and cold. Lucas met Zariah while she was a patient. He prescribed her medication under false records. Their relationship turned sexual. She never told him she was HIV positive. She knew. She had journals about it. She took antivirals daily, hid them in her kitchen cabinet behind the cinnamon. The DA read aloud her text messages. Still feeling weak? Should have wrapped it, document. Told you once was all it took. Madison flinched. Evan looked down. Then came the blood work. Lab reports. Viral loads. Medical records. Every last detail pulled apart in front of strangers and a jury of 12, like a man dissected after death. Lucas's final 2 months had been hell. Liver failure. Neurological symptoms. Opportunistic infections. He begged for more time, Madison had whispered in a taped interview. He cried and clawed and asked for another chance to make it right. But she wouldn't even look at him. On the stand, Zariah never denied it. She didn't scream. Didn't weep. Didn't explain. The defense tried. God knows they tried. Trauma. Poverty. Abandonment. They painted her as a survivor-turned-predator. A woman who'd been used by men her entire life, until she decided one would finally pay the price. But she didn't cry for the camera. And that unsettled people. When they brought out her journals, the room fell into a silence that hurt to breathe in. The handwriting was loopy. Beautiful. Childlike. He looked at me like I was an object. I told him I needed help. He said he could give me a few nights in a hotel. He never asked how I got the bruises. He never asked who hurt me. He was kind. But not to me. Only to the version of me that said yes. Jurors stiffened in their seats. One, a woman in her 50s with a crucifix necklace, put a tissue to her face and sobbed. But Zariah? She didn't flinch. She kept smiling. The prosecutor circled back. Miss Mills, do you feel any remorse for what happened to Dr. Barnett? Zariah leaned into the microphone, her voice soft but crisp. No one ever felt remorse for what happened to me. Did you knowingly infect him with HIV? I told him it only takes once. She looked toward Madison. Then Evan. Her eyes softened, just slightly. I didn't ask to be made this way, she said. I only asked to be heard. The gallery was a mix of horror and pity. And something worse, confusion. Because they didn't know whether she was a villain, or just the last fire sparked by years of quiet, unseen suffering. The closing arguments came like thunder. The prosecution thundered, she weaponized a disease. She knew. She lied. She watched him die. The defense whispered, she was groomed. She was invisible. She was broken long before she broke him. And in the jury room, they fought. One man shouted. One woman cried. A third said, if that were my daughter, I'd understand. The verdict took 4 days. Guilty, on one count of aggravated assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. Not murder. Not even attempted. Just intent. Madison Barnett stood, clenched her fists, and whispered, she killed him. You all know she did. Evan didn't stand. He just sat there. Frozen. Zariah didn't blink. As the judge read her sentence, 12 years, she turned her head toward the audience. Her eyes scanned the room until they found Evan's. She gave him the smallest smile. Not cruel. Not smug. Just a goodbye. And when the bailiff reached for her elbow, she whispered one last thing. Quietly. To no one. He should have asked if I was okay. Then she was gone. Madison broke down in the hallway. Screamed into her hands. Her lawyer tried to comfort her, but it didn't work. She'd watched her husband rot. Watched him waste away in a hospital bed with tubes in his chest and no answers in his mind. Zariah never apologized. She never wrote to the family. She never made a statement from prison. But her diary remained in evidence. And the last line, scribbled in purple ink 3 days before Lucas died, read, all I ever wanted was for someone to stop touching me long enough to see me. And she smiled. Even when they locked the door behind her. Even when they took away her name. She smiled. Because for once, the pain didn't belong to her. And someone finally listened.